This episode deals with issues that may be difficult or triggering for some listeners. Welcome to Make That Paper, the show where we talk about all the crazy jobs we do to make the cash we need to pursue our artistic dreams. Why don't I have that memorized yet?
I don't understand how you could possibly not. And to buy overpriced tickets to the immersive Van Gogh experience popping up soon in a town near you.
I saw it coming to Montrose. Today, we're talking about the mortuary mopping mission or the cosplay consideration. And how about that admin assignment? We are your hosts, Jamie Parker Stickle
and Jason Bieber.
Today, we are talking to a phenomenal writer and visual artist whose work has been featured on This American Life, in the Rumpus, and has been made into a film that made its international debut at the Palm Springs International Short Fest.
Her visual artwork is exciting, moving, and inspiring.
And we are so thrilled and fortunate to welcome this incredible artist to the show. So wherever you are, go ahead and give a round of applause for Gloria Harrison.
Yes.
So I'm going to make my mom listen to that. Look, Mom, I made it.
Yeah. We do this for the moms.
And for your mom, listen, I've been begging this lady for 2 years. Come on the show. So I'm so excited you're here.
Can you tell us your mom's name just so we can just talk directly to her throughout the episode?
Oh my God. Her name is Risa, R-E-S-A.
Okay, Risa, this one's for you.
She's going to be so happy.
I should have asked your pronouns. I don't know your pronouns.
She wrote it in her email. She's she, her.
Oh, good. Okay.
I sign off that way.
Yeah.
Right.
Every single email I send because I want to normalize it because I have a non-binary child.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, I try. I'm not as good at it as I would like to be. Let me say that. And sometimes I take it for granted. Like especially if I've known a person and referred to them as she, her, lady, woman, girl, whatever, I'm like, oh crap, I'm part of the problem. Like I'm self-aware at this point that I'm a problem. So I'm going to try better.
Well, I teach in one of the many jobs that I have. As I wrote in my letter to you when I sent you my entire resume.
Yes.
My actual jobs are the ones that I do the volunteer work for because those are where my passions lie. And so I teach women's strength, which I'm not going to tell you which organization I work through because I'm probably going to say things that would make them not like me mentioning them during this interview, inevitably. But I teach self-defense to women, and we are not supposed to, hey guys, you know how it's really easy to go, hey guys, and we're of the same dude generation, like everything is dude. You bump into a chair and you're like, dude. So we have to erase gendered language from our instruction. And so I've gone with mortals.
Mortals.
I'm going to write that down.
Hey, mortals.
Yeah, I like that.
Because that's almost always accurate.
I'm sure there's the occasional deity coming in to learn self-defense.
Yeah, well, you would think so.
Who might take offense.
I've been writing humans a lot. Hello, humans, to things instead of like gang, because I also am like, I'm not sure gang is appropriate anymore. So it's hello, humans.
Also, y'all.
I do y'all a lot too, like y'all on Twitter, especially because you're limited in characters.
That's right. Well, you are not limited in character, but
but Twitter does minimize
overflowing with character.
Speaking of characters, I want to talk to her for a second about a character she did. Her cosplay.
Oh yeah.
Because in the same year in 1993, you played Wendy at the opening of a Wendy's. I played a crash test dummy.
Hold on. Not just. Oh well, yes, you did, but not just at any Wendy's. A specific Wendy's in a very specific locale.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
In Roswell, New Mexico.
Which is amazing.
Right. And it was a really big deal because it was the very first Wendy's. And I think they had like Arby's and McDonald's, but like Wendy's came to town. This is like big city shit.
Yeah.
And I got the yarn wig and I got the bloomer outfit.
I want all of that.
Was Dave Thomas there?
See, this is the joke, right? Jason, you've nailed it because these were the types of jokes I got. So it was 3 months I'm wearing this whole outfit and people made those jokes. Hey, Wendy, like all of that was fine. But the TV weatherman came in and, you know, I'm walking around and I'm used to it. Hey, Wendy, yeah, whatever. Hey, Rod, I know your name too because you're on TV. And he's sitting there with a colleague and he says, "Hey, Wendy." And bear in mind, I'm like 15 or 16 years old. He's like, "Hey, Wendy, what would your dad Dave do if he found out you were dating Ronald McDonald?" And I looked at him and I said, "He'd probably grimace."
Hey.
And to
Nailed
this
it.
day, yeah, I know. To this day, I'm like, that was probably the funniest thing I've ever said.
Oh my God. Okay.
Anytime the weatherman tries to make you the joke.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, the actor who plays you in the short film, who's in Yellow Jackets and Santa Clarita Diet, that sounds like a joke they would make. Like, I want to see them play Wendy and make that joke. Like, nailed it.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
They
nailed it.
Yeah. Well, and I got to laugh. I mean, there was also obnoxious people, right? I mean, it's Roswell in the 90s, like Anita Hill, who is my feminist icon, because she is the one that taught me to say, maybe don't say that to me.
Yeah.
But it was around that time, but not everybody had gotten the memo yet. And I'm like on my hands and knees, like scrubbing something up. And some guy's like, "Hey, while you're down there," I'm 15, right?
Jesus, what is wrong with people?
Do we have time?
Do we have time?
Yeah.
We had this conversation right before we actually came on, and Jason was challenging a couple of things I said. And I was like, listen, I'm saying all this stuff because young girls are being indoctrinated into the sex working lifestyle that they shouldn't be. Like, they should just be allowed to be humans. Anyways.
There's a reason I teach self-defense to women.
Yes. Yeah. I worked at McDonald's when I was 15, and I can't even remember the way grown men would come in and hit on all of these young people working. And some of it, like, I've blacked out. Like, I literally don't remember. People will be like, "Well, Jaime, you were young and blonde and pretty, so you know what it's like to be a blonde." And I'm like, no, I don't. Because I've actually blocked it out. Like, I don't know a lot of what was said to me. I don't know.
You know what's interesting about that? And interesting to me anyway. So I'm halfway through a memoir that I've been halfway through forever. But the thing about writing a memoir is that the story is always changing, right?
Yeah.
Not just moment to moment because you're still living, but also like the perception of the past changes with regularity, right?
Yes.
So what I want to say about what I have experienced in this life is constantly in flux, although some things remain sort of static. But I realized that Phil Donahue and Sally Jesse Raphael saved my life.
Amazing.
And the reason I say that is because I had a very dysfunctional and extraordinarily violent, horrible, horrifying upbringing. And so but also, like, we were young, and I say we because I know we're the same age, at the same time that like MTV was emerging.
Yeah.
Yep.
And at the same time that like pop psychology was emerging. And so I threw myself into media in a way that the boomers before me really couldn't, even though like they were the first TV generation. And so as viewership really increased and the TV was in everybody's home, and people realized how to make money off of sensationalizing, ideas. Phil Donahue and Sally Jesse Raphael were coming up, and they were having people on to talk about things like gender and sex. And I just remember really clearly, and Oprah started around the same time, right?
Yeah.
So we had this really kind of amazing, we were at the head of the tide as some of these national conversations that are just like in the water now started emerging. And I just remember there was like a moment in time when people were talking about repressed memories.
Mm-hmm.
So think Fawn Hall. Who was it? Jim Baker sexually assaulted if that wasn't Fawn Hall, that was someone else. I'm sorry.
I'm bad with names.
Madam, whatever your name is, I should remember. Jessica something anyway. But these women were talking about how like they didn't say no because they blacked out and they were repressing memories. I mean, like I have and like 7 or 8 or 9, but I'm simultaneously watching this horror in my own life, right?
Yeah.
And my mom, okay, so I'm just going to say this, and I have permission to talk about it because it's in my memoir. But the big secret is, well, I'm not going to reveal it this way, but what I'm going to say is that my mom was allowing all of these things into my young life and into her life, and one very abusive man after another, because there was like some secret, that some like thing, right? We didn't talk about the thing, and I didn't know what the thing was, but whatever the thing was, it was big enough that it like justified these things in my life. And she couldn't remember, and she couldn't talk about it. And so then all of these conversations about repressed memories that were going on in pop culture, I was like, well, my way of being a good mom, 8-year-old, when I'm a grown up, is to never repress anything. And so I made this weirdly conscious decision at a super incredibly young age to just detail every single thing that ever happened, which, you know, now I can't let shit go. But so the big, I mean, so then, you know, the big dark secret is that my mom, okay, so my grandma, which is my grandsons, I have 2 grandsons, they're 12 and 10. Their great grandma is 85. So she had 9 kids by the time she was 27.
Oh my gosh.
And then my mom had 2 kids by the time she was 18. And then I had my daughter when I was 16, and my daughter had her first child when she was 17. So there's this many intergenerational, you know, like intergenerational trauma, which I think is built on repressed memories, to be honest with you. And so, my grandma's second husband, and she's in her mid-20s, right? He was a state trooper, and he was having sex with all the little girls, my mom and her sisters, and they were like 8.
God.
And he was making her and her brothers have sex in front of him. So this was the big secret, right? I know. So you might want to put a trigger warning at the head of this episode if you're going to leave this in. But what I'm going to say about that is that I was in my 40s by the time the words were said.
It's crazy.
And there has never been a time in my life, because I have plenty of my own words, right?
Yeah.
So there has never been a time in my life where I didn't know the words.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense at all.
It does. And I mean, it's tangential.
I think Sally Jesse Raphael and Phil Donahue.
Yeah. I think that our parents in the 80s, when we were 7, 8, did not censor television. Like, you just watched whatever was on. There was no like rated R TV, TVMA, mature audience only. Like, no, you just plopped in front of it, and that was it. What was on. And at 4:00 in the afternoons, at least Eastern time, it was Sally, Phil, Oprah. Later on, it was Ricky Lake, and she talked a lot about trauma.
She did, but then it became more sensationalized. I feel like Phil Donahue. I feel like Phil Donahue was a little more like pure journalism. Yeah. So it like hovered the line between pop culture and actual investigatory journalism. Yeah. You know, and like, who would expect that that's what their 7-year-old is watching? But
no, I mean, even if they did, it's because they were listening and they were like, oh, well, some of this is going to go over their heads, but it's like, no, it didn't. It stayed with us. And this is why Gloria writes memoir, which is true. Right. But I will say that there's this idea that I don't think it's new, but it's more talked about now, where we suffer from so we carry on the pain, generational pain. So like
generational trauma.
Yeah. Whatever happened to my grandmother, I'm carrying that, even if I don't know specifically what happened to her. Like, it gets passed to my mom, who passes it to us, and like we just keep living it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's like epidemiological trauma. So, like, it actually rearranges DNA. There's actually emerging science that's completely and totally fascinating that talks exactly about this. When you have a traumatic experience, it actually changes your chromosomal structure or some. Please, science people, if you're listening to this and I've gotten it wrong, give me a little bit of latitude. I'm not.
Put a comment in the show notes and we'll move on.
Yeah.
Do we have any commercials today?
Let's take a quick break and see. You know what I bet our listeners are thinking right now?
What's that, Bieber?
They're probably thinking, this podcast thing is so easy. I could start my own podcast. And you know what? They're right.
Yeah, we've been using Anchor for a few months now, and it has totally changed our game. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain.
It's free!
I said, let me explain.
Fine.
There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and pretty much anywhere podcasts are streamed. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. I mean, it's everything you need to make a podcast, all in one place.
And it's free!
Yes. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And now, back to the podcast.
But I mean, it's at least in the realm of accurate.
Yeah.
And then that's passed up because they did a study in rats.
Yeah.
Where like a rat had a traumatizing experience and became afraid of a thing. Mm-hmm. And then the rat's grandbaby was also afraid of that thing, having never encountered it.
Yeah.
Right.
It's wild, right?
It's where instinct grows out of.
But it's also why I believe that we should be doing human testing. I think people should volunteer instead of the rats. Like, let's have human test. That could be a side hustle. What
There's
are you talking about?
ethics
I'm
around
bringing it back.
Yeah, it is. It is. People do it.
I'm bringing it back.
Okay.
Like, you guys like I just reached into the abyss for coming. Okay, this is actually bringing it back. You cleaned funeral homes.
Speaking of trauma,
this is again, here we go. Gloria's life. You cleaned funeral homes. Let's tell the people what happened when you were cleaning funeral homes.
Oh my
God. At another young age.
And how'd you get it? Tell us how you got into that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I want to preface this with I was raised by teenagers.
Okay.
Raised by teenagers.
So these are not fully grown people with developed frontal lobes, but I was 14 and living in a funeral home in Oklahoma. My stepdad was a mortician. My family lived in an apartment above the hearse garage, which was in the parking lot of the funeral home. So it wasn't it wasn't above the funeral home itself, but it was like an outbuilding.
I'm hearing 6 feet under.
Yeah. I have had people tell me this for many years. It's where I learned about Harold and Maude, and it became my favorite movie. But I got a gig. I don't know. It was like $3 or $4 an hour or something, or maybe like $5 a night, or some like cheap rate for the late 80s, early 90s. Cleaning the staterooms. And, the staterooms are where people lay in state, which is, the embalmed bodies are in a casket, and people can go in over the course of several days and look at their loved ones or whatever. So sometimes the staterooms had people in them, and sometimes they didn't. And if you've ever had the joy of being in a funeral home, you know that it always smells like pledge. And there's a reason why. It's because they keep it very, very clean. And so my job was to go in with pledge and a, rag and clean the wood, including the caskets in the stateroom. And sometimes there were bodies, but whatever. I was making moolah.
You were making like $5.
Yeah, I was $5 right here, man. But my stepdad, who was a juvenile asshole,
okay,
he would sneak in and disable the alarm. Eventually I would be like, oh, this dude's going to jump out from around a corner. But it took me a while to realize that, because what he would do is disable the alarm and then hide around a corner. And then it was only when I was coming out of rooms that had bodies in them, I would come out of the room. And as I stepped out of the door, he would jump out and yell, "Boo."
Oh my God. My dad used to do that though, not in a funeral home, but my dad would do that too.
I was like, where'd he get the dead bodies?
we don't talk about Bruno. But like, I would remember when horror movies would be coming out and they would play the trailers on regular television in between Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Like, and it would be like basically the whole movie in a trailer. And you were like, oh my God, Freddy Krueger's going to kill me when I'm dreaming. And I was terrified. Yes. I'd stay up and sweat through the night. And my dad knew I was terrified. So he would like come from the basement stairs and grab you. And you were like, I'm gonna die. You know, like, why do dads think that's funny?
It's not just dads. Why do people think that causing your fight or flight response to kick in is funny? And B, I am now trained in self-defense. And if I accidentally beat the crap out of you,
it's your fault. It's your fault.
It's the price of admission.
Yeah. Look how funny it is now.
Yeah. What I think is so great about you is that, you know, I think this conversation is all about what makes you such a fascinating artist to watch, both your visual art and your writing. Like reading what you write is so detailed in a way that I think is missing sometimes in a lot of things I read, basically. But you really cement like what it was like to grow up, one, not only through these horrors, but two, in the 90s, you know, you bring in very relevant references that a lot of people don't do. One piece that sticks out is your reading of, I think it was Stephen King, but
yes,
I loved that piece because it was so like, it just brought me right into that world and remembering what it was like in the 90s. And, you know, I know a lot of people talk about V.C. Andrews, but I think Stephen King was the one. I mean, I think it's, what was it? Flowers in the Attic?
Flowers in the Attic is V.C. Andrews. And it's a brilliant book.
Yeah. And it was like, I'm not sure. I mean, I just think the 90s was just such a time where we were reading about horrible things. You know, Stand By Me was like, well, it's like a lot of kids in it. Like, I don't know. And your reading just brings all of that your writing just brings all of that to it, which I think also makes you, it's incredible to me, all these jobs that you do, because you do real jobs. You don't write full-time. You don't do art full-time. You do real jobs in corporate.
We're throwing some air quotes up around the word real.
She does day jobs and
day jobs.
But she does jobs that people make careers out of. Like she is very, has a very impressive resume, y'all. I read it.
Mm-hmm.
I read it.
Oh, she sent us her actual resume. Normally, we ask folks to send us a list of their jobs, but she's like, "I'm just going to send you my resume."
I felt very unqualified to read it.
Yeah, I know. It's like, I mean,
shit.
Now
well, I rewrote the intro though.
You did rewrite the intro, which we appreciated, because that was great. And Jason was watching the Reno 911 clip you sent.
Oh my God, had you ever seen that before?
Well, we watched Reno 911, but no, I've not seen that.
That shit is so funny. Sometimes I walk in and I'm like, you are sore on my taint, but I just think it.
Yeah. I mean, because I had a corporate job and it was slowly killing me. Like I worked the corporate job while I was auditioning, while I was writing, while I was filming stuff for almost 10 years. And these were nice people for the most part. I mean, misogynistic, absolutely. Patriarchy, yep. Anything go wrong, scapegoat me. Why not? Because I'm not an MBA. Okay, fuck you.
Not allowed to have actual emotions.
This is one of the things that really gets me about these corporate jobs is Gloria sitting in a meeting, taking diligent notes in the meeting, but also doodling in the margin of her notepad. And she receives a what?
A text from the person running the PowerPoint presentation saying, please stop drawing. And then she turned me into my boss, who I've never met because she lives on the East Coast. I don't actually physically work with any of my colleagues. This was a person who came out to do this presentation for the client. And I go to the client's site. So I work with the client. I don't work with my colleagues. And I had to do like an ADA thing where I'm like, I have ADHD and this is one of my like coping mechanisms. I actually can like, pay attention better. But like that part didn't get conveyed to my boss. And so I had to do this whole like work plan and I had to go through customer service training. And I'm like, I'm 45 years old. I know how to anyway. And also PS, the client, like my client contact was next to me in the meeting, also doodling.
Also doodling. Probably thought your doodles were hilarious.
But to Jason's point, should you be texting in the middle of your presentation as the presenter?
That too.
Also, like, okay, Hermione. Like,
are you jealous of my skill at the art doodle?
There's no breadth of character allowed.
It's true. It's true. That's true. I mean, I had a dress code when I worked in retail. We had a dress code, and that made sense to me. If you worked in certain departments like clothing or shoes, you were expected to wear 3 pieces. So if you were a man, pants, jacket, button down, whatever. Women, it could be a skirt, top, blazer, sweater, whatever, or pants.
Did you have to wear pantyhose?
Yeah, well, I wore tights. I wore tights. But when I got to corporate America, it was the same thing. Women were expected to be told what to wear. And there was like a dress code, what was appropriate and what was inappropriate, like nothing sleeveless. You should be wearing 3 pieces. So you couldn't wear just a dress. You'd have to have a blazer or a sweater over the dress. You couldn't wear one piece. Like it was very foreign to me. I felt like,
what is the word? Proscriptive? Is that the word I'm looking for? Yes.
Yes. It's very alarming. It was alarming to me. Nobody followed it really. I don't think anybody got in trouble. I followed it because I was like, I need this job. I'm an actor. I don't want to I'm one of those people that follows all the rules so that I don't lose out on something that will help me get to the next thing that I want to do. Right. So I followed all the rules, but it did make my blood boil when I saw people not following the rules. And I was like, did you get in trouble? Did you get written up? No, I have an MBA. And it's like, oh, well, okay, I don't. So let me take a note of that.
Go eat a dick. So that's cool.
Go eat a dick. Yeah. That's prescription. That's my prescription for you.
So I have a question though.
Yes.
So I have not had the privilege of working full-time in the art world.
Yeah.
I dream of it. I also wonder if like at this age, can I do it? But whatever. But it sounds stifling in its own way.
Yeah.
Like I said, I know Liv Hewson. I met them when I went to the Palm Springs International Short Fest.
Mm-hmm.
I picked them up in LA and we drove to Palm Springs together, and then we went to Joshua Tree and then we drove all the way back. And so I got to spend some time with them, and they are a lovely, interesting person. But they're also describing the ways that it's stifling. There's not a dress code, but there's a gender code. There's a, you've seen Amy Schumer's Last Fuckable Day, right? It's like
a million times.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. But it's like, they were talking about how Sally Field was married to Tom Hanks in a movie, and then 2 years later, she played his mom. And it's like, okay, but I'm 45 years old. I am in a polyamorous relationship. I still want to be fuckable. And I mean, I'm just, that's the other thing too, is I'm also not supposed to talk like at this, like it's a tacky.
Yeah.
For women, middle-aged women to talk. And I'm like, but why though? Because that's real dumb. Like I don't want to be Tom Hanks's. I don't also want to fuck Tom Hanks, but you get the point. How stifling is it? How do you remain creative?
Well, I was 29. I was between 29 and 31. Who knows? Age is irrelevant at this point. But I look young for my age, and I especially then. And I went in for a role of a 40-year-old woman. And she said to me, which was fine for me. I was like, that's fine.
You were how old?
I was 29.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. But for me, I was
thrilled for the opportunity to play anything. Yeah.
A little offended because I was like, do I look 40 yet? Like you go through all these scenarios. You don't know what 40 looks like. I'm 29. So I go in and she tells me, you're playing it a little young. Try having some lead in your boots. And I was like, what? And she goes, your life, you're 40, you're ending, like you're not 29 anymore. Like play it like, it hurts. And I was like, oh my God, but should 40 now, having been 40 just a minute ago, I can say 40 doesn't hurt. But moreover,
unless you sleep in the wrong way.
Unless you sleep on a couch, that's really bad.
40's hurting. I don't know what you're talking about.
Shut up. 40 doesn't hurt. But my point is, the next year I went in to a different casting director, and I was going out for a young mom to a woman who was actually 25 playing 18. I mean, she was 5 years younger than me in real life. And I was going out to play her mom, and I got a call back, and I was like, really? I should be going out to the same role she has. Like, it's very, it's hard. But on the other side of it, like behind the scenes too, like Jason just finished shooting 2 episodes, of a show. And the thing is, most of the time he's
sitting. You get to tell me which show?
Oh yeah, it's called Good Trouble. It's on Freeform.
Yeah. But he just sat in the trailer most of the time. And when he's on set, when it's his time on set, he's sitting in a chair watching most of the time. A lot
of waiting.
Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of waiting. And then you go up, deliver your line, and then they let you go. And it's like, is that acting? Is that entertainment? Like, what is that? Like,
well, I saw
art?
this. I actually was, I am trained to be a COVID compliance officer, which of course the entertainment industry needs right now, because in order for them to be able to have productions and entertainment broadly, right? So I got called to do a 3-day gig as a COVID compliance officer for an advertising campaign for a large national ad. And this was just a couple of months ago. I trained when I was unemployed, and I actually took 3 days off work to go and do this because I'm like, art adjacent? What?
Yeah.
And so it pays really well.
Yeah, it's like $500 a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, but it's also like you're competing against a whole bunch of people they want you to have production experience and whatever. And it's a little bit like credit. You can't have credit unless you get credit. But now I have credit, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
But I was watching, and the talent, there were 2 people that were hired as the talent, and they just sort of like stood around and looked fabulous.
Yeah.
But like they had to continually look fabulous. There were people with like mirrors or like those sunshades that you put in your like I'm sure that they're called something, and they were they were constantly having like adjustments to their skin and whatever. And I'm like, this is, and they made so much more than I did for like 2 days of mostly having blush put on, which, if you're listening to this, people, which I highly doubt, but if you are, I know that you are skilled and talented people. But that's what it looked like from my perspective. And I'm like, this is art.
The whole thing with the high pay of actors, and
it's a reimbursement of,
it's exactly
of
right.
all the 20 years of, you
don't get paid for the job you're doing. You're getting paid for the hundreds of jobs you didn't get.
Yeah.
For all those auditions you drove to that you didn't get paid for the callbacks, for the years, and it literally, like Jaime said, I did a job 2 days ago. Mm-hmm. That was the first job. That was the first paid acting job in 3 years.
No, a year.
No, it's 3 years.
Didn't you work there?
I worked at the onset of, I guess it was 2 years.
Yeah.
The onset of COVID, before it was, I guess it was here, but we didn't know it was here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like, you still have to put on your resume that you're an actor, right? Yeah. So this is why I'm like, I don't really tell people I'm a writer anymore, even though I write all the time, because I'm not publishing. But it's like, are you a writer if you're not publishing? Are you an actor if you're not?
Yes. The answer is yes. The answer is always yes.
Sure, but I'm not the only one, I'm guessing, that has the internal,
absolutely,
fight of like, am I really anything?
Oh, well, recently my friend said you should, send your proposal for your storytelling class to this writing institution. And I was like, I know. And I was like, no, I don't have a chance. And the deadline is 4 hours from now. And, but I did it anyways. Like I sat down and I did it anyways. And I said, I don't have a chance because I don't have a published book. Like, who am I? Like, people can't, you're not a writer. You shouldn't be teaching it unless I'm starring on a show, first of all. But even though I have 20 years of performance background and, and writing, and no. And then I got it.
I know. I saw.
I
I'm
fucking
so
got it.
It
happy
was
for
epic.
you.
I'm still stymied by it, and I know it's like a small win, but it's a huge win for me.
No, it's not.
It's a
Don't do that to
huge
yourself. It's enormous. It's
win for
gigantic.
me.
And
Yeah,
I know the publication you're talking about. It's wonderful. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
I'm so. They sent me the nicest fucking letter. They were like, "Thank you for your wonderful class proposal. Wonderful." They said
Aw.
wonderful, which means that they genuinely like what I'm offering, and they did their research on me too. And that's just like, it's
You know what? The
validating.
response letters, that's an interesting point. The response letters are a thing. I got a rejection letter from Modern Love in the New
Mhm.
York Times. And it's still one of the things that I'm most proud of
Yeah,
because
they
it
do
was
well.
written by a human person
Yeah.
that really like had things to say about my piece and like clearly read it. And I was like, you know, that whole, it's just an honor to be recognized. It's kind of true.
It's true. It's true. As an artist, it's true.
Let's take a quick break.
And we're back.
Because it sort of brings a point. You know, this podcast, we try to focus in on the jobs people do or have done to support themselves as they pursue their craft. When did you identify your goal to be to be an artist and to pursue writing and creating art? And what, at that point, were you looking at it as a professional career, as a hobby, as like, and how did your work life, your paid work life, play into that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I just want to point out that you clicked the icon and now all of the pop-up videos are going to happen. And now it's it's ransomware. You're going to have to pay to get your files back. So I'll try to be both thorough and concise.
Fair.
So I went. Okay, so I have twins, and they're going to be 20 on Valentine's Day. One is non-binary, one is a boy. And I got married in 2001. They were born in 2002. In 2003, I returned to college. I was like 27, and I had had a couple years, and I knew that I was going to have to return to the workforce. I was just finishing breastfeeding twins.
Oh my
You
God.
know, I was, yeah.
I can't even.
I want a medal and a chest to pin it on.
Yeah.
And
Earned.
I got my degree in English because it was the path of least resistance, because what was happening was I was working in administration before I got pregnant. I got pregnant on my honeymoon, and
sign of a good time,
unexpectedly. And so then I was like, I have to, the cost of daycare. The answer, Jason, is daycare. Yes. But the longer answer is, so I got my degree in English, and I was taking a bunch of women's studies classes simultaneously because there was like dual credit, right? So like I would get women's studies credit and English credit. And at a certain point I was like, should I major in women's studies? Like, they're converged paths at this point. But it, my ex-husband convinced me to stick with writing or with English. And so I got a writing minor, and I was working with the publishing program at Portland State University. It's called Ooligan Press, and it's the only independently owned university-based publishing house, something. I'm going to get it wrong, but it's amazing. And I took an editing class and I met some people, but so simultaneous to trying to get some writing credentials, because I figured that would only bolster my ability to get paid more in administration. Because the thing was, I'd hit a ceiling. I couldn't get better administration jobs unless I had a bachelor's degree, any bachelor's degree. Just pick one. So that was my original goal, was to be able to get a better job so I could afford daycare, so that I could leave my kids to go work to, be capitalism's hooker. And and I started taking memoir writing in these women's studies classes that were writing credits and English credits. And I was like, I think I'm good at this. I'm like, I definitely have some shit to say. And people were responding really well. And I wasn't getting positive reinforcement at home because I was raising twins and my marriage was falling apart. And my teenage daughter was starting where she was either going to get pregnant or get addicted to drugs or kill herself. And she ended up doing all three. So, it was like miserable at home. And at school, I graduated when I was 30. I'm literally finding my voice, both my like written voice and also like learning how to speak my mind and speak up in my marriage. And, it was just, to say it was transformative is cliche and also an understatement.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, MySpace. Do you remember MySpace?
Remember MySpace?
Yeah.
It had just hit, and my daughter was being like groomed by some older, I don't know who it was, but I was like, the hell even. So I made myself a fake MySpace profile. And my name was Nom de Plume.
Love that.
Because I'm very clever.
This is awesome.
I couldn't think of a pen name. And I was trying to
wrote pen name.
And I'm surprised that it wasn't already taken.
No,
you're getting in there early.
Yeah, I know. I was an early adopter. So I was trying to stalk my daughter. But I was just about to graduate, and I put like, you could list all of your like interests and hobbies and whatever. And so I put writer on there. And a man named Brad Listy had just released a book called Attention Deficit Disorder, and he friended me. And I was like, who the hell are you? And he's like, who the hell are you? He's like, you say writer. And this turned into the most important thing that's ever happened to me creatively, because Brad hosts a podcast called Other People Pod. Mm-hmm. And he also started do you know Brad?
I know that podcast.
Yeah, he also started the Nervous Breakdown, but all of that started with Brad Listy's Dead MySpace blog. And I ended up meeting people that are to this day some of my most beloved people, including Gina Frangello, right? Kimberly Wetherell is a audiobook recorder in Manhattan, and she's just one of my most beloved friends. Greg Olear. I mean, like, I could go on and on. I was standing on the shoulder of giants, and I was a fan, and I was reading, and then Brad started the Nervous Breakdown, and then he started blogging on the Nervous Breakdown. So we all sort of like dutifully went over there. And at one point I said, can I contribute? And Brad's like, have at it, have a ball. He gave me a login, and that was that. And my second essay that I wrote, because I was like, I need to up my game, right? Because I was blogging on MySpace and gaining like a following of people who like would check in to read my blog. And so I was like, this is for real though. These are like people who don't subscribe, right? Like they're just, so the second essay I wrote for the Nervous Breakdown was, let's see how fast this baby can go. And I wrote it in 35 minutes. And then it ended up being recorded for This American Life. And it ended up being made into a movie.
Still one of my favorite reads ever.
Thank you. But when I wrote it, I was like, I want to impress these people. These people that I've been reading all this time that are letting me write with them, I need to bring my best to this game. And I'd already been writing memoir because of school and whatever else. And so I sat down, and that and people who have never experienced this think it's bullshit and some sort of woo-woo crazy like hippy dippy shit. But I know both of you have felt it at least once. I can guess this already. But you're sitting there, and then you become embodied by the spirit of something that is not you. And then you do something really, really super creative, and you're like, holy shit, give me more of that. That was a drug. I need it. And you don't even know like where it came from or how to get it back. Right. So that's what entered me and how I produced that essay in 35 minutes. Of course, it was a story I've been waiting to tell for many years.
Of course it was.
But boom, as soon as I landed on writing it in first person, present tense, it was done. And I've only tasted that a few times in my life, but it is the high we seek. It is why we keep doing all of these other jobs to support our art habit, because it is the only thing that living is about, right? You feel it when your babies are born and you put them on your chest. Like there are only a few things in life that give you that high, and it's not even like, I mean, it is drugs. It is a chemical reward. It's literally like you can get into the neuroscience of it, right? But it's also, it feels like I am not religious, and it's the closest thing to spiritual.
Like divine purpose.
Like divinity.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's two ways to look at being an artist too. And I think this is a good episode to discuss this on, is that there are two forms of art: the art you're talking about, and where you work to support it, because it doesn't, when the art is created, you can't create it massively enough to always be a sole income. But there's also art where people make it a corporate job, which is what Hollywood is. It is, the guest stars, the co-stars, where it is a factory of bringing in the cogs in the machine to fill a space, and then you go. It's what, commercials are. It's also what, you have 27 books in one series and you produce 6 of them a year or 3 of them a year to meet timelines and deadlines, and Amazon, needs, the market needs, the reader's needs, et cetera. So there's a formula that you have for this particular book, and you keep bringing that character back and you fit it into this storyline. So, that can, art can be corporatized, but I think
that's also rare.
It is. Well,
yeah, I mean, we can get so granular and modular about it, because there is art, there's entertainment, there's where they intersect.
Yeah.
There's.
Is it still art if you monetize it? Right? There's that whole question.
Is it art if you made it with the intention of monetizing it, or
that's right?
Is it different if you made art and then it gets monetized later?
Is Van Gogh as valid as Thomas Kincaid?
Right. But I think what I was getting at more or less is, though, that the fact that you had that divine feeling, that thing that you chase that high every time, like you can't stop chasing it with your art. That's the thing that I think really defines the artist, is it's like, even if you corporatize or capitalize any other form just to make your dollar, because the one thing that you do that gave you that feeling, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
No, you're right. But and I think you can be an artist and have never felt that.
That's true.
I think that if you, somebody said, I've read On Writing by Stephen King and Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott, because those are the two like writing Bibles. In one of them, they said, if you can do anything besides, I think it was Stephen King, if you can do anything besides writing, do it. Why would you do this? But if you have to do this, here are some helpful tips, right? And that's the thing, is if you're an artist, it's because you have to. It's like an illness. It's like IBS of the brain. But I was thinking of something that J.K. Rowling said in an interview, and I just want to preface this with, I love the Harry Potter books. I'm sorry that she is a TERF, and fuck her for not being who I want her to be in the world.
Exactly.
But thank you for writing those amazing books, J.K. Rowling. And she said that because she was on a corporate contract, right? Yeah. And so she said by the 4th book, she was writing and she was thinking about crushing her hands with a sledgehammer, just because she couldn't imagine having to do this. Like the passion was gone from it. So I think that there's something about that too, where like you can monetize it, but who's in the saddle?
Yeah. You've kind of, I mean, they call it selling your soul. And to an extent, that is true. You're giving away the thing that was so personal, and intimate to yourself, and turning over, if not artistic control of it, the demand for its production. You know,
Yeah,
where originally, when it starts, because we as artists, especially, as an actor, I'm a hired gun, right? There's no job. I don't just go out I can't go out on the street and just start acting. I have to.
You could hawk it.
I can. Well, I can.
people frown on it. It freaks them out. But
exactly.
yeah.
Especially here in downtown Montrose. But there are many art forms: painting, writing, music, and so on and so forth.
Graphic design.
Any art form where you can just sit down and create something inspired by yourself because you feel the need, and there is nothing outside of you telling you to do it. And then you monetize it. And now you've got a deadline for the next one, and you've got notes, and you've got outside influence, and it's suddenly
But you also know, right, that there's no soul in the other things that you do to pay your electrical bill.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
and line the pockets of someone who already has a lot of money.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, if I want to monetize, I think it's a little bit like you don't do the drug you deal, right?
Yeah,
like
right.
like maybe, so this is why that Onion article, like do it on evenings and weekends and until you die, is funny, because I think it's how you keep passion. And my day job, I have student loans.
Yeah.
And that's
same.
the honest truth of it.
Yeah.
If I didn't have student loans, I'd live in an RV. I'm not even kidding, and I have student loans because it got me out of my marriage, and it got me into a world where I can taste the high of divinity. So it's like, what is the payoff there? But I don't want to do the day jobs that I do, and I do them to the best of my ability, and I'm good at them, and I find the things in them that I love, but I make art because I have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a different way than I go to work because I have to.
So your blog is privatized, and we
For
don't
now.
have for now. Okay.
Because I bought my URL back from an ex-boyfriend. GloriaHarrison.com was like being held hostage, and I finally got it back. So I'm going to be building a website.
Great. So will we have photo essays of your work on there too, as a visual artist?
I hope so. Yeah.
Good. You were doing caterator stuff.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in college, and seeing, parenting and
that's what I'm saying. How are you in college? Do you have a full college load, because you graduated in 3 years, so you had full credits?
Oh my God, I graduated 0.2 percentage points away from summa cum laude. I graduated magna cum laude, and I had twins and a daughter and a marriage that was falling apart and a burgeoning alcohol problem.
You were my hero.
And you were working.
Don't know. Yeah. And I was working. I don't want to go into how terrible my marriage was, but
No, we don't have to.
Sometimes you just like do things to distract yourself from the horror of the other things.
It's so crazy. I feel like I did that in a relationship with a boyfriend that I could just walk away from. And I'm like, why am I in this relationship if I'm doing everything I can to avoid this relationship? I should not be in this relationship.
I feel like I could get a lot more done if I didn't like you so much.
Oh my God. That's hilarious. Quit being adorable, Jaime.
I feel that way often about you. So
goddamn pleasant.
You're not my real mom.
This
is parenting advice.
That's okay, because artists are parents too. And it's like, how do you parent when we also that is a good thing that we can end on is I think that's interesting too. Like, how do your children feel about, do you allow them to read your work? Do you allow them to be a part of it? At what age do you stop allowing that?
They don't allow me. is the interesting part. I mean, they can access anything I have, whatever, but there came a point where they were like, you may not post about me.
Yeah.
You may not post photos of me. You may not post things about what I do, which is why I have a new nom de plume, like a dummy Facebook profile, because I don't want to be censored by my kids either. And as much as their lives are theirs, my life as a parent is mine. And it's a really tricky line, you know? But the second they were like, don't do this, I couldn't be like, it's my body, I do what I want. Which is what my daughter used to tell me. I bring her up a lot, but actually there were some very funny stories about our life together. But I still have the experience of parenting them, right? And this is also where I'm at with memoir in general. It's like what the big reveal about my mom's past, the big secret that like actually led to everything that I am, is also my story.
Yeah.
My daughter died of a heroin overdose in a homeless camp. That's her story, but it's also my story.
Absolutely.
And so the tricky thing, and I know Gina talked about this a little bit, but the tricky thing about memoir is, I mean, you only can speak from your lived experience. I, right?
Yeah.
But your lived experience overlaps sometimes, and you just have to, own what's yours.
Yeah.
So I quit publicly posting about my boys. I quit blogging and whatever, or my kids, but I still have to talk about it.
Yeah. You're writing from a place of mothering, like that. It is an interesting turn when children stop realizing that who you are for so long was part of what the mother was, or the father, the parenting, like your life changed so dramatically, having a child. Everything you do takes on new meaning. Every time you work, it takes on, you're making choices. Do I go play a board game, or do I say, no, I have a due date on this paragraph, like everything. So you have to be able to talk about that and how it changed you, better or worse. So, it's hard because kids become adults and they're like, no, I didn't choose to be birthed by you, so you can't talk about me. And it's like, well,
if I didn't choose you to be birthed, I would have chosen someone else. So
you were an accident.
We know you have to. Gloria has to go do her day job. She's snuck out of her day job to sit down with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for taking a break.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you. This has been so great.
Have a great 11 o'clock.
Thank you.
I love me some Gloria Harrison.
Agreed.
Now, normally we would announce next week's guest, but next week we're taking a little break.
Spring break.
Uh-huh.
But be sure to join us in 2 weeks when we will be joined by legendary horror writer Stephen Graham Jones.
I am so freaking out about this.
She want my money, but I got no honey. This ain't no savings and loan.